in anxiety, your mind is on a channel. And one of the things that you want to do is be able to change that channel. You're listening to one channel, and your mind can only listen to one channel at a time. So on that anxious channel, what we want to do is change that channel. So a couple of things that I like to use for changing that channel. The first is a phrase, a meditation. I like to use a verse from scripture that I can think about and accent each word differently. So Psalm 46:10 is be still and know that I am God. I can accent be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. That will help me come off the channel I was on.
Welcome to Let's Be Real, a completely honest, entirely practical conversation about how to live our lives with freedom, purpose, and abundance. Popular author and communicator Nicole brings her 20 years of experience as a counselor, pastor, and coach to a real conversation about the tricky questions and tough decisions in life, and how to find clarity in action no matter what obstacle you may face. Have a topic to suggest or a tricky situation you need help with? We'd love to hear from you. Send us an email or voice memo to nicole@nicoleunis.com. We might feature you on the show. And now here's your host, Nicole Eunis.
We are here with Let's Be Real Live. Let's Be Real is my podcast. It releases weekly. We are just talking about the topics that matter to all of us, particularly when it comes to our inner world, just like what's really going on inside of you. And I know that all of us are dealing with really tough decisions right now, just tough stuff, like kind of lose-lose. It feels like lose-lose situations all over the place. And we're just living in this constant need for decision-making. And I feel like this is the time where your spiritual health, your psychological, your emotional health, like the work that you've put in to be a healthy person, or the work that you know you need to put in, now it's like it's all coming to bear right now. This is like the time, because a lot is being asked of all of us. So I don't know if you're from Richmond or you're in the Virginia area. Right here in Richmond, we just had our first announcement that Richmond Public Schools will be going all virtual until February, at least February of 2021. And so for those of us who are in Richmond Public Schools or have kids in the Richmond area, I mean, we are all reeling and just kind of thinking about, what does this mean? I saw some moms this morning, just happened to see them near the Starbucks. And I was like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? So what are you guys thinking? Where is your state? Where are you in the process? Truly, whether you have your own children or not, what is happening with schools reopening will impact every single person. Because if you don't have your own kids, or your kids are grown, someone on your team has those kids, your neighbor has those kids, someone that you love is a single mom with those kids. Everyone is being impacted by this decision. And when we're sort of waiting, and we know, honestly, our school boards, our administrators, like they have to make really, really tough decisions right now. Everything feels like a lose-lose, and we're all kind of living in this uncertainty. So if you've never struggled with anxiety before, you may be experiencing your first round of like low-key anxiety. And I want to talk about what the definition really is of anxiety as we get kind of into our topic for the day. But how are you guys handling it? What is your thoughts about school, whether that's college or high school? What are you guys thinking? I know for us, we're like trying to pivot, and I'm talking with different moms who are like, let's homeschool together. Let's pull the kids out. Let's just let them do online. Is there a private school they can go to? Which I have one child in private school, and that decision is still kind of pending as well. I think for us, I've got kids who are in high school and middle school, and it feels a little bit different for me. My occupation is more flexible. I have a little bit more of the flexibility that I need to kind of make it work. But I'm thinking particularly about moms with elementary school kids, or moms who have essential jobs that they go to their job, or that you're working full time in your job. I mean, I was with a friend of mine who has a 6-year-old, and I was like, you can't raise a 6-year-old and work full time from home and have your 6-year-old there. Like that is a total lose-lose situation. I just feel like people want to, generally, I believe most people really want to do a good job with their life. Like they want to do a good job at their job. They want to do a good job as a parent. And when you're put into an impossible situation where you're responsible for your, especially young child's education and holding down a full-time job, like, can you do that? Is that even possible? And I think we're all having to face really impossible situations right now. So I think one of the things that can be really helpful, like as we're doing this, is that you need community. You need other people. You need to be talking to other people, because there are ways forward, and that way forward is probably going to require community and more relationship than in the past. A lot of moms I've been talking with have been saying we're thinking about co-oping, we're thinking about spending time together in a smaller group. So wherever you are with this scenario with school, I just want to encourage you to not get overwhelmed by only, like, there's only one choice. I think there are more choices, and part of it is going to be talking with friends and talking with others who are in your scenario so that you can feel connected. I mean, honestly, just this moment at Starbucks this morning, I already felt better because I was like, well, at least I'm talking with other moms. Like, I know what they're thinking, and I didn't feel as crazy when I was like, hey, like, what about this way? What about this way? And even right now on this live, maybe there's some of you guys who are in the same exact place. I mean, really, truly, like, we have to recognize that this is a lose-lose kind of situation. It doesn't mean that it's a lose-lose in the long term. Like, something beautiful can come out of this. But right now, like, every decision is really hard. Every decision in our lives is hard. It's not easy. It's unprecedented. None of us have ever been here before. So we need one another. So part of the reason that I just wanted to jump on live today was just because of that. I'm like, you guys connect to each other, like, be talking, listening to other people. And it is nuts. And we have to figure this out together as best as we can. So here in Richmond, like I said a little bit earlier, Richmond Public Schools have gone all virtual, made the decision to go all virtual at least through February of 2021. I have a rising senior. I have a sophomore. I have a 7th grader. I'm feeling it. I'm going to name it because this is Let's Be Real. I am feeling also the loss for myself of what I had hoped this year might bring. I'm feeling the loss of the community of just like my son's athletics and those parents, as well as the loss of what my time is going to look like. And you guys, we have got to acknowledge that. Like, please, in the midst of all this, don't listen to that voice that's like, well, it's a pandemic. At least I'm healthy. I know that's great. I'm glad you're healthy too. I hope you're healthy. But you've got to give yourself space to say, okay, I need to like acknowledge that there is loss here and there is hardship for me, even if it's just because I can't do my job the way I wanted to, or my schedule's not going to look the way I want it. Like, you got to acknowledge that, because if we just hold that out and say, okay, this is true and this is real, we can then put it down. Like, I can say, okay, that is true. That is valid. That is acceptable. I was talking with another friend of mine who has 3 children, and I was talking to the husband, and he was like, you know, this was supposed to be my wife's year. This was the year that all 3 kids were going to be in elementary school at the same time. And I remember so well the year that all my kids were in elementary school at the same time on the same schedule. I literally put them on the bus at 7:12 a.m. and they got off the bus at the same time together every day. It was glorious. Like, I feel that. I feel that for that family. Yes, of course. This is unprecedented. Yes, of course, we need to do the right thing for the common good. Yes, of course, we're blessed that we're healthy, or that you have your job, or that you have a way forward for your children. But we've got to acknowledge loss. It's okay to say, like, man, I had a vision for what this would look like, and it is not looking, we are not in plan A anymore either. And guess what? Your kids feel that way too. Like, they have to wrestle with that they're not in plan A anymore. And we need to make space for that to be okay. Like, it is okay to be sad and feel a loss and be disappointed, but we can say, like, it's okay to say that and then to also move on from it. And then we can kind of feel that, oh, Stacy says same. This was my year for all 3 in school in the same schedule. So yeah, let's just acknowledge what it is. Let's acknowledge the loss. Particularly, I think we've got to say, okay, what am I feeling for each of my children and my spouse if you're in a family? Or what am I feeling for my coworker or other people in my family? What am I feeling for them? What am I feeling for myself in the midst of this? Because it's frustrating too. If you're a single working professional and this hasn't impacted you quite the same way, but it's impacted everyone on your team, you might be like, well, this has impacted me too, because I'm feeling lonely. I'm feeling isolated. I'm feeling like I got to carry weight differently for other people. I feel that. Like, we've got to be able to say that part of the scenario. This is actually one of the ways to deal with our fears, is to acknowledge them. And we can acknowledge them. We can hold them in our hand. We can say, this is what it is, but I can also now put it down and say, okay, now knowing that this is what it is, knowing that I'm on plan B or C, D, what do I want to do moving forward? What can I see that could be good about this moving forward? But don't just go to the good without stopping, or go to the like planning. So many of us are so driven by fear and anxiety, we don't even know that we're doing it. We're just torqued all the time, like, blah, blah, blah. And we're not really stepping back to say, okay, let me just process what's happening just a little bit. Let me think about what might be going on here. And a lot of that, I think, at least for me, comes down to a belief in God's sovereignty. Like, is God sovereign? Does he care? Does he love us? Does he know? Is this a surprise to him? No. If this isn't a surprise this season, how can I take this season that I was not expecting, a season that's possibly very hard, a season that's very different? How can we take this season and see it as something that God is giving to us? And I can acknowledge all the things that I wanted for my life. And then I can say, okay, this is what God has given to me this year, or for as long as this lasts. It's lasting so much longer. And then I was thinking, I was like, this is episode 15 of this podcast. I'm like, oh my gosh, I started this podcast in a pandemic and we're still in it. Like, I don't think any of us were thinking quite like this. So in the mix of all of that, I think one of the things we want to do is acknowledge what isn't, so that we can move on to what is. And then when we move on to what is, we can sort of be able to have a more open sense of like, what is God giving me? What is it? What am I working with? So that I'm not just driven like nonstop by this fear. So let's talk about fear and anxiety for a minute. I really do think most people are low key anxious. I mean, it's just a lot. So, whether or not you know it, it's probably going on. So here's the thing on why I'm even saying that. I think in some ways we have to be low-key anxious right now. We're kind of I was talking with a friend this morning and I said, I don't want to be overly dramatic, but it reminds me of like wartime, because we're fighting an invisible war in a lot of ways. And a war is when there's such seismic cultural shifts that it impacts people in such different ways. So children are deeply impacted. Women are deeply impacted. I think we all know this. Women still to this day, no matter how egalitarian your home is, women generally bear the brunt of childcare, housework, and all of that. And so to think about being a professional woman who also now feels the weight of your children, of course, there are exceptions to the rule, and all of you are welcome. Stay-at-home dads are welcome here. But in the cultural sense, the seismic shifts that we're experiencing, the fact that we're having a collective traumatic experience that our children will remember their whole lives, that we'll remember for our whole lives, the fact that it's impacting deeply the workforce, the family unit, and sort of our understanding of one another, the way we relate, and to, of course, churches, all of that, the way we go about our lives, it is like war. So we've got to step back and be like, okay, this is truly a life-changing season. In the midst of that, and I remember once asking my grandparents about their experiences in the Great Depression, and they were like, I don't remember exactly what they said, but I remember my interpretation was like, oh, it was like they kind of lived a normal life. I'm just sort of feeling that now. I'm like, you can have this like crazy thing going on. And of course, some of us are very much on the front lines, very much experiencing it differently. But for many of us, we're just kind of like doing daily life. And we're like just going about, but we're carrying this weight. So fear is a real thing. Fear is part of our human condition. It's part of our experience. We have fear for a reason. We've been made to be able to survive by using fear. So we can learn by watching other people, so that when something happens bad to a person, they run out in the street. We don't run out in the street either. We have actual fear of pain. We have fear of failure. We have fear of rejection. We have fear of being alone. Those are real fears because they create real pain. And there's a reason that we avoid pain as human beings. So fear is real. Anxiety is the action we take in response to fear. So fear is real. Fear is happening. Fear is a real thing. Being fearful of pain, being fearful of your child's pain, being fearful of failure and what that would mean for you in your life, being fearful of rejection. All of that is real. Anxiety is the action we take in response to a fear, whether we know that we're doing it or not. Does anybody hear what I'm saying? Does that make sense to you guys? So there's real fear, there's real stuff going on, and then there's anxiety, which is a response to that fear. Now, that action, that anxiety action can look like ruminating thoughts. It can look like worry. It can look like control, the way I'm controlling my environment, the actions that I'm taking to relieve that fear for even just a moment. It can look like all of those things. But even here in the ruminating thoughts, there's an energy that anxiety takes. So it's taking energy from you and it's operating, whether you know it or not, in your operating system or above. Sometimes it comes to a peak in the form of a panic attack or not being able to sleep at night, or even so debilitating that it's hard to leave your home or hard to be in relationships. That sort of clinical anxiety, when you want to get help, perhaps medical help, along with some counseling to help you with that. But everything in mental health is sort of on a spectrum. And so I think we need to understand that there's a spectrum when it comes to anxiety, and there may be situational anxiety, which a lot of us are experiencing right now. And then there's sort of clinical anxiety. The difference between situational anxiety and clinical anxiety, one of the things that's different, and believe me, if you need more medical attention or professional help, I'm just giving you some advice, some wisdom. I have training as a counselor, but obviously if this is speaking to you, this podcast will not be enough. You're going to need more than this. But clinical anxiety is when anxiety is debilitating in all areas of your life. So that's sort of like relationships, work, and home. Like in all of those places, you're experiencing a debilitating form of anxiety that keeps you from being able to just thrive in life. Many of us have situational anxiety that we manage in all kinds of ways. We manage by being super controlling. We manage by having ruminating thoughts. We manage by drinking. We manage by shopping. We manage by maybe a sort of anxious way that we're in relationships. All of that is part of that spectrum of anxiety, and it's what we're doing in response to fear. So one of the ways, sort of long-term, to dance with anxiety, to release it, is to acknowledge the fears that you have and to follow the path of that fear, to see where it came from, where it might have started, or where it's taking you. Where is that fear taking you? So when I talk about a fear of pain, and you say, yeah, I fear this, I fear losing a child, I fear losing my parents, I fear, follow it through and be like, okay, what is it that you fear? Well, I would never want anything bad to happen to my family. Well, is that something that you can control? Can you control the belief, I don't want anything bad to ever happen to my family? There's a way to maybe reframe that thought that's more realistic. Like, I'm going to take measures to make my family as safe as I can. That's a little bit more within your control. If you're living from a belief system of trying to make things happen, like, I don't want my children to be unhappy, I never want anything bad to happen to my parents, those are actually things that you can't make happen. So you're dealing with an impossible bar. You're trying to jump over an impossible bar. That's exhausting. Like, jumping over an impossible bar is so tiring. What we want to do is bring the bar down to like a realistic understanding. And I know I'm asking you to do deep work, because to do deep work means you have to grapple with the reality of death and suffering and pain. It means you have to grapple with the reality of sin and forgiveness and grace. It's grappling with the reality of your limitations and boundaries and disappointment. And all of that stuff is, in its own way, sort of the way that we deal long-term with our fear, is start to deal with some of these things, what's behind the fear, knowing that fear is normal, so that when you're anxious, you're like, what am I so anxious about? What am I thinking about? What have I been taking in to myself that might be contributing to that anxiousness? That's a long-term approach. The long-term approach, I kind of want to give you a couple of not solutions, but sort of ways forward, depending on the kind of fear that you're experiencing. This is loosely taken from She's Got Issues, the first book that I wrote. So if this is helpful to you, you may want to check that out. There's some exercises in there that can be helpful in this place if this kind of is speaking to you. So the first is pain. If I fear pain, this is going to be our first invitation, is to go deeper in the meaning of life. And that's kind of what I was just referring to. What would it look like to go deeper? If you feel like I could never survive if I experienced hardship or pain or suffering, or if I had to experience that on behalf of someone in my family or whatever that thing is, I think that's an invitation to go deeper into what makes life meaningful. Because y'all, this is a reckoning. Like, I really do believe this, that we have been living in a very comfortable, sort of superficial life for a while. And I feel like this is a wake-up call to say, like, it's not the meaning in life does not come from living with comfortable, superficial living. And I have to go deeper than that. And I need to seek deeper than that. Thankfully, the life and teachings of Jesus is a wonderful place to start. I'm reading through the Gospels right now. So helpful to be reminded. Jesus was a man who divided. I mean, there was such a divide between those who would seek out his words of wisdom that were so countercultural to the culture of the time. And I just read in Mark, there's a section in Mark that I'm happy to teach through where he like goes after the conservatives and then follows it right up with the liberals and just upsets everybody. And I'm sort of like, this is our Jesus if you follow Jesus. So going deeper, like what is beyond this pain? What is there more here for me is a great kind of starting point. If your fear is failure, I want to encourage you to redefine success. That's been on my heart and mind a lot in these past months. I'm asking myself, what does success look like? Not success in the world's eyes, but what does success look like for a life that I want to be a part, that I want to be proud of, a life that I want to live, a life that I want to create? What does success look like? Because if I'm out there trying to say success is all of these things, many of these things have fallen away right now. If I'm out there saying it's all these things, I might need to pull back right now. And I can't say it enough. Start small, start small, start so small. I mean, I just redefined success for my family life because I realized I had completely unrealistic and idealistic notions of what I thought life should be like with my family right now. And I just decided to like go with, I want to make dinner Sunday through Wednesday. And by make dinner, I mean, I want to plan and provide dinner Sunday through Wednesday. And I said to my family, hey, I would like for us to sit down and have dinner together at 6:00 Sunday through Wednesday. Everyone agreed. I was like, great, we're all together. We are going to be together Sunday through Wednesday for dinner. And guess what? It's Wednesday and we're going to get takeout, but it's still dinner together. And those small steps are ways that you can get control of what success really looks like. I'm just trying to check on y'all's comments. So small steps can create and redefine that success. If you're like, I'm going to do this huge thing right now, it's like, well, everything is kind of in the air right now. So let's find some things you want to be successful at. And I want to encourage you to do those in the spheres of life that are important to you. Raising children, your marriage, your work, your relationships, your friendships, your spirituality. Kind of look in each of those. What are small things that you can do to redefine success, to bring that anxiety down about trying to find your worth in your work, in your relationships, in things that you can't control. Okay, fear of rejection, if that's a thing for you, I want to encourage you to be seeking what it would look like to have God's approval. What does it mean that God defines what a good life looks like? And wherever you are on your spiritual journey, if you're looking inside of yourself for that approval or looking around to others for that approval, it is so damaging. It's so hard because all you have to do is look at Hollywood. I mean, think of a celebrity that you like. Can you think of a celebrity that you like from like a TV show that you loved or a movie that you loved and you don't know where they are? You don't know what they're doing? Like other than the iconic celebrities that we could all name all around the world, what do you think's up with that person? Like that person that you thought was so amazing at acting or that person who was so amazing at music or whatever, like they have to go live a whole life. And for a lot of those people, they may have a moment in the spotlight where they have all that approval. Then they have to go live a whole life without that. And that, to me, is just a picture of what it looks like. If you want to find your worth in what people think of you, it is going to be a really tough road. And the sooner that you can get out of that and off of that, the sooner you can determine these are my people that speak into my life, and everybody else, I respect them, I listen to them, but they don't like create my identity. And I have a source and I have a place to go to understand what approval looks like. And I'm seeking that for my life. You will have such a firm foundation that helps you in times like this when many of those coping mechanisms may have fallen away. Can I get an amen? Anybody know what I am talking about? That is just a real thing. And it is a real thing for me. Whenever I speak passionately, it's because it's real for me. The Spirit's like, I'm going to preach a word to you right now. So even for me, I'm like, okay, what does it look like to seek God's approval? What would God call a good day in your life? What would God call a good day? Would it be you answering all your emails, how many likes you get on Instagram, whether or not whatever, and like because is it you shaming your body today? Or is it I was present and available to the people who came to my door? I was available for interruptions. I was at peace. I allowed for space to be and to wonder and to laugh. And like, I actually think God would say, well done, servant. Well done, sister. I mean, there's such this idea in scripture of being present to the moment and being attentive and curious to what God is up to that I think we have a new invitation to in this season. Okay. All right. Finally, fear of being alone. This is like my number one thing that I talk to with my clients when I was in counseling. And the idea of the fear of being alone, I would just ask people, how do you feel about being alone? How do you feel about being alone was one of the most helpful metrics for me to know how someone was really doing with their fear and anxiety. And when I say alone, I mean no TV, no radio, no book, just solitude. How do you do with solitude? If you want to find your way forward in this area and you know that you've been avoiding things, I want to encourage you to start at 5 minutes at a time of allowing space to feel and to think and to be present with yourself. If you're a person who needs that space, just that is the way forward through that fear of being alone. All of us are going to be alone at some point. There is a sense of like, how can you get comfortable with who you are and actually enjoy listening to the still small voice that is inside of you if you're walking with God, so that you know and can feel confident about the way that you're living your life. So last thing I want to talk about today, I don't know if you guys, any of you asked, but I want to just mention real quick, just a quick, when you're stuck. Do any of you guys get stuck in those ruminating thoughts, middle of the night wake ups, maybe even panic? You feel it kind of coming over you. That's a heavy press on your chest. Your breathing gets labored. You're just all of a sudden, everything is overwhelming. I'm just going to give you 2 things that can help if you've ever experienced that, or if you have children who experience this. One of them is called grounding. Grounding is coming back to your body. It's like helping your body know that you are safe. Because what's happening in panic is your mind is going somewhere that your body is not there. Your mind has gone somewhere. And one of the things that you can do is help your body to feel safe. So that involves, you might just pat your arms. You might put both your feet on the ground, sort of sit and feel that you're present and that you're here. I like to use box breathing as well. So that's when you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4. So you're sort of making a box with your breathing. Those are just 2 very basic things. You will get through it. You will be able to ride through it if you can just stay present, bring yourself back to the present when you're feeling those things. Because middle of the night panic, ruminating thoughts that run away with you, they're not leading you anywhere good. Like whatever it is that you need to deal with, it's going to come back. Like, don't worry. You're not going to forget what you were trying to think, and you're probably not going to solve it right then. Like, y'all know what I'm talking about. It's a hamster wheel. Like your mind has gone, it's just not going anywhere. It's like a stationary bike that you're spinning like at 150 RPMs with no resistance on it. It's not doing anything. So these grounding techniques can help you come out of that place. Also, your mind is on a channel when you're in anxiety, and your mind can only be on one channel at a time. In anxiety, your mind is on a channel. And one of the things that you want to do is be able to change that channel. You're listening to one channel, and your mind can only listen to one channel at a time. So on that anxious channel, what we want to do is change that channel. So a couple of things that I like to use for changing that channel. The first is a phrase, a meditation. I like to use a verse from scripture that I can think about and accent each word differently. So Psalm 46:10 is be still and know that I am God. I can accent be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. That will help me come off the channel I was on. If that isn't long enough to get you out of that anxiety, I also love to use like an ABC model where I'm thinking of the attributes of God, A through Z. You could, if you're not as versed or learned about who God is, or you're still learning there, you could also use gratitude, like A through Z, name things that you're grateful for. And you'll find that you're making your mind think about something, because your mind's like, what's a B thing that I'm thankful for? And that kind of attention is enough to get you off of that other anxiety channel. Remember, anxiety is related to fears that need to be dealt with, but anxiety in and of itself, the action of anxiety, is not productive. It's not helpful. So what we're trying to do is quiet that mind so that you can deal with those fears, and do that by changing the channel, by grounding yourself in the present, by knowing that you're safe. You will get through that. You can dance with that anxiety, but you don't have to live in it. You don't have to live there forever. Some of us are very sensitive. We have personalities that are more sensitive to the world in a way that I think means that anxiety is a more present reality for us. But that doesn't mean it has to be that way forever for you. There are ways forward. There are ways that you can change. Okay, you guys, thanks for joining me today. I've loved being together, and I will see you soon.
Thanks for tuning in to Let's Be Real with Nicole Eunice. We'd love to hear from you. Have a topic to suggest or a tricky situation you need help with? Send us an email or a voice memo to nicole@nicoleeunice.com and we may feature you on the show. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode.